tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly self-awakened one. Homage to the noble, blessed, and perfectly self-awakened one. Homage to the noble, blessed, and perfectly self-awakened one. Well, welcome everybody, and tonight I'm going to talk about metta. So I'm going with particular emphasis on the well-known Karaniya Metta Sutta, but I also want to talk about the Metta Sutta, which is another one, and also perhaps the four boundless qualities if we get time. So I had put some chanting in here, so I'll just skim past them. Right. So the what are we doing? Yes. First of all, I want to talk about the Metta Sutta, and I'll come to the Karaniya Metta Sutta next. So the Metta Sutta is in the Anguttara Nikaya, in English known as the Numbered Discourses, and it's in the chapter of the Eights, and it's the very, very first sutta in the chapter of the Eights. And it's about the benefits of love. And so many traditional Buddhists have seen this list of 8 benefits, which is of course why it's in the chapter of the Eights, that if we practice metta on a regular basis, then we sukham supati, we sleep happily, or we sleep well. We wake up happily. We don't see any bad dreams. Other human beings will love us. Non-human beings will love us. The deities will protect us, etc. Now, I think the one that's easiest to believe is number 4, that humans will love you, because kind people are easy to love. And I think it's psychologically also easy to understand why, if you're filling your mind with thoughts of kindness on a regular basis as a training, then naturally you're going to sleep well, and you're going to have nice dreams, and you're going to wake refreshed. So how do we do this? And the Gatha before this list in this sutta explains how we develop metta, or what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to, they're the benefits, so how do we get those benefits? So in order to get the benefits of metta, and the Karaniya Metta Sutta gives a great detail of how to develop it, but this one kind of explains the extent of that development that you've got to do. So the 8 benefits can be found when the heart's released by love, Chaito Vimuttiya. Now the term Chaito Vimuttiya, or the heart's released by love, more than implies, pretty much states that the metta practice is also a door into Nibbana. And if I have to get to, I want to get to Nibbana, so I've got choices of different doors. I can get to Nibbana through cultivating an understanding of dukkha, which is important, and I can also cultivate loving kindness, which is probably much more pleasant. So we need to cultivate that the capacity within ourselves to actually be kind. You know, because it's just not an accident. There's some skill involved and there's some personal qualities. So we need to cultivate it, we need to develop it, and we need to seriously practice it. We need to master it in terms of mastering skills. And once we've mastered being loving kindness as a skill, then we need to make that a vehicle and a basis for our entire lives and our entire practice. And then clearly we need to keep it up, consolidate it, and properly implement it. Now I'd like to give you a personal simile for this. And for this I'll use reading and writing. It is possible to get by in the modern world without being able to read and write. However, it's extremely difficult and you will always be impoverished. Similarly, it is possible to have a spiritual practice without cultivating metta, but similarly that spiritual practice will be impoverished. So if we're going to learn to read and write, you know, like grade 1, grade 2, mummy, look, I've written my name. And at that point, we think we can write. And so we have cultivated, we're at step 1, we've cultivated the capacity to write. But the capacity that we have for writing in grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3 isn't anything like the capacity that we have as, say, a graduate student doing a PhD. Has a very much different capacity. And when we graduate and we have a professional life, that reading and writing is basically the vehicle. So it's reading and writing is the vehicle that we get our education through. Once upon a time it was all verbal, you know, and we had to be able to hear and remember, certainly in the Buddha's time. But in the modern world, we get our teachings and learnings, at least in schools, certainly in Australian schools, and I'm sure Sri Lankan schools are the same, through reading and writing. It is the vehicle and basis for our education, and it is also the vehicle and basis for our professional lives. So you can see in the same way that the Buddha here is saying that just like you cannot get through a successful, affluent, healthy and happy life, in the modern world anyway, without being able to read and write, similarly, it's pretty much impossible to have a deep spiritual practice, a deep bhavana, without developing the capacity for loving kindness and having it as a vehicle and a basis for your practice. I feel that the Buddha must have thought that, it seems to me that he thought that metta was so very important because it is actually mentioned a lot. There's not just one metta sutta, there's several, and also it's frequently mentioned in other suttas. The frequency with which the Blessed One mentions metta implies very strongly to me the importance that he put on it. So, now to the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And I looked up Karaniya, the word Karaniya, in my Pali English dictionary. And it spoke of being a sacred duty. So, when you think of that, in the very title, it is our sacred duty to develop metta. So the Karaniya Metta Sutta is found in the Sutta Nipata, which is part of the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is the fifth of the Nikaya collections, and is the collection that also includes the Dhammapada, the Therigatas, the Theravada, and all of those sort of miscellaneous works. So let's have a look at Karaniya Metta Sutta. So here's our very first line, first two lines. Karaniyam Atta Kusalena. Karaniyam, sacred duty. Atta, for me, the self, right? So this is definitely a personal thing. We're not talking about anatta here, the non-self. The Buddha's definitely talking about that sense, that felt sense of self. So I have a sacred duty, kusalena, to be good through goodness, yantam santam padam, to walk that path, abhisamecha, the higher path to peace. So in the English version that is chanted at most, if not all, of the English as a first language Theravada monasteries around the world, and particularly in the Ajahn Chah tradition, but beyond that, the English translation that is used in the English as a first language Theravada temples is a particular translation that came from Amravati in England, and scans nicely for chanting. So here's our first lines in English. This is what should be done by one who is, whereas the Pali also includes not only is but would like to become skilled in goodness, and who would like to know the path of peace. The Pali actually says is skilled and who knows, or that sentiment, but apparently according to the teachers I've listened to, if I was to, in English, to say I am going to go to the shop in 5 minutes, in Pali you would say I've gone to the shop, because it's assumed that this will happen. So therefore, if we want to be skilled in goodness, we will become skilled in goodness. If we want to know the path of peace, then we will know the path of peace if we apply ourselves to learning it. So the next parts of the next few lines of even the first and second gathas list the 14 qualities that we need to develop in ourselves to become skillful at being kind. This very much points to the idea that being kind isn't sort of some kind of accidental thing, that like when we're in a good mood we can be kind, but when we're in a bad mood that we won't be kind, that kind of, and that then depends on our moods. This list of qualities is about developing these qualities in ourselves so that we have the qualities that are required to be kind. So Sako, which is able, that's capable. Ujucha, upright. In a way, I'm once again using the Amravati translation, but another translation of Uju is straight. And in English language, straight as a sort of slang word, I think is very close to the meaning of Uju. So in English, if you're straight, you don't take drugs, you don't do weird sexual deviant things, you're not a crook, you don't steal or embezzle, you're not crooked, you're not bent, you're not kinky, right? So if you're uju, upright, you're straight, yeah? Straight and upright have similar meanings in English, which means, you're an upright member of society. So here the Buddha is saying if you're not straight, if you're not upright, if you're crooked or bent or kinky, then it makes it difficult to be kind. Because being crooked and bent is very about myself, all about me and my pleasure and what I need. But if you're a straight up person, then you don't necessarily have to get obsessed with your own needs. You then have the capacity and the capability, the sako, the ability to be kind to other people. Straightforward and gentle in speech. I think in a lot of ways, in my observations, is those of us in the West are often not very good at being gentle in our speech. And I've noticed that sometimes Asians are not very good at being straightforward. So we have different cultural problems with this particular one, if you like. To me, this provides a little bit of a conundrum. How is one skillfully both straightforward when we speak and gentle? For me personally, this is still a work in process, but I look at this very carefully and with great deal of interest, because I personally want to know how I'm naturally straightforward because I'm an Aussie girl and it also is my natural personality, but how can I temper that to make it more gentle? And then when I start being gentle, I find myself also talking around things. And that sometimes also isn't kind, when people don't get to the point, and so you actually don't really know what it is they're actually trying to tell you. So that one's a balancing act, and as I said, I'm working on that, and I often look to people that I notice do it really well, and I watch them and I try and emulate that. Particularly the wonderful senior teachers and such. Humble and not conceited, I think, are somewhat obvious, because a proud and conceited person, once again, they're so self-absorbed with their pride and conceit that they're not able to pay enough attention to other people, right? Because other people, if you're prideful and conceited, then you think you're better than other people, so you're not really going to pay attention to them properly. And if you don't pay attention to other people, how could you be kind? So these are all very, very practical in our daily life. Practical things for us to think about and reflect. It's part of the reason why I very often chant this sutta in English, so that as I chant it, the meaning goes through my mind as a contemplation, and I can contemplate and ponder this meaning. Now, the word mudu means more than just humbleness, although humble's a pretty good translation. It also means a willingness to allow the teachings to change us. A flexibility, an ability to allow ourselves to be moulded like, clay, right? Because all of us have some defilement that we're stubborn about, that we hang on to, that we're attached to, With mudu, which is a humble flexibility of mind, it's like that willingness to hear, oh, I need to do some more work in being gentle of speech, for example, in myself. And I think it's quite obvious in a lot of ways how someone could be, if they're conceited, they're not really very kind. So when I ponder this, I think, oh, is there some place in what aspect of my life am I not humble enough? What aspect of my life am I conceited about? Is there some aspect where my pride and conceit is meaning that I can't properly pay attention to my own needs as a person and to the needs of the people around me so that I can be kind? Contented and easily satisfied. Discontent can ruin your life. You know, when you walk into a room and the first thing you see is the thing that is not good enough, this is discontent. When you look at a person and you see their faults, that's discontent. When you look at a situation and all you can see is the negativity, that's discontent. So if I were to look at you and all I could see is your faults, is that going to give me a kind attitude towards you? Probably not. If I look in at myself with discontent, am I going to be kind to me? Probably not. It's very hard to be contented and easily satisfied with our own selves. But we're supposed to be doing metta to our own selves. So there's the capacity to be contented and easily satisfied by who and what we are now is a kindness to ourselves so that we don't beat ourselves up unnecessarily or have unrealistic expectations of needing to be perfect when that's impossible for anybody except a Buddha. Even the arahants aren't perfect. They've certainly perfectly rid themselves of defilements, but they have not perfected all the paramis, only the Buddha has. So only the Buddha's perfect. If even the arahants aren't perfect, why on earth should we expect ourselves to be perfect? So the reality is that it's actually okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be good enough. And so if we want to be truly kind to ourselves, we have to be okay with being good enough. What is good enough? Well, the Buddha explained that good enough is keeping the 5 precepts. If you keep the 5 precepts, you are good enough, and that is sufficient to be contented and easily satisfied by who and what we are. And by that I do not mean to not have ambition and goals. But the achievement of that ambition and goals is in the future. To have contentment with who I am in the present says, I am a person who keeps the precepts and has the capability to do what it takes to achieve that goal. I can study, I can practice, I can rehearse, I can whatever it is that needs to be done. So whilst I may not have my goal, because it's still in the future, for example, my goal of becoming an arahanta, I need to learn how to be content with the fact that right now I'm a nun and that's good enough because I am on the path to Nibbana. And as long as this moment now, the moment I'm in, I stay on the path, and the moment I'm in, I stay on the path, and the moment I'm in, I stay on the path, that's good enough. It's okay that I'm not an arahant yet. That's okay. But as long as I stay on the path, I will get there. It's like when I'm in first year uni, I'm not a graduate yet. There's no point in being discontented with that. I should be happy with being a first year or a second year or wherever it is I am, and happy to do the work that is to be done in this moment. Contented and easily satisfied is a thing that we get a great deal of social pressure in the modern world not to have. Discontent is extremely important for the success of marketing. And most of the advertisements and marketing and all of that kind of thing is designed to imply that we're not quite good enough unless we have their product. If they can keep us feeling discontented and not very easily satisfied, then we are much more likely to buy things that we don't need with money we don't have. Contented and easily satisfied are very important qualities to develop in yourself in order to have a happy, peaceful life now. And having a happy, peaceful life now makes it easier to be kind. Being contented and easily satisfied makes it much easier to be kind and makes it much less likely for us to criticize somebody and hurt their feelings, or criticize ourselves and hurt our own feelings, yeah? Because criticism hurts. Because we've all got the same pressure to be perfect, which is completely unrealistic. The second one, number 9, is particularly difficult. Another one that's really difficult in the modern world is not busy with duties. It's so easy just to have more and more and more and more and more things that you have to do piling up on your to-do list. And when you're really, really busy, it's very hard to pay attention to your own needs and the needs of others. Something Ajahn Brahm said which I found very helpful with this, was that being busy is not the same as having a lot to do. Being busy is trying to do it all at once, trying to do several things at one time, trying to cook the dinner and listen to the kids. That's just too busy. How can you listen properly when you're cooking? How can you just can't. So not busy with duties means pacing yourself and doing one thing at a time and doing it properly. And if one of our loved ones needs some attention during that time, stopping and giving them our proper attention. Otherwise, we're too busy for them. Are we too busy for our co-workers to properly give them attention when they need it? What about ourselves? Are we too busy to give ourselves proper attention? Are we too busy to listen to the needs of our own heart, of our own body, of our own mind? How can we be kind to ourselves if we're too busy doing too many things? to listen to what we need, to listen to what the people around us need. And I've seen people do this, like people who achieve lots and lots and lots of things, and yet because they do one thing at a time and do that thing well, they're not actually busy, even though they achieve a lot. I've also seen people who are extremely busy, but they're spinning, almost like spinning their wheels, spinning in circles, because they're going from one thing to another, to one thing to another, to this, trying to do this and this and this and this and this and this, and the attention is split. So none of those things get done well. And there's an overhead with that, where you move your attention from one thing to another, and then you have to remember where you were with that. And so none of those things get proper attention. And in fact, what would happen is if you did them one and then the next and then the next, it would actually there's some chance that doing three things sequentially would be quicker than trying to do all three at once. Possibly. Possibly not. But either way, you're going to be kind while you're doing it. You're going to be kind to yourself, and you're going to be kind to other people and friendly. Frugal. Salahukawuti. Frugal. Interesting idea, isn't it? I must say, there was a Kuba Arjan came out recently, and I went to hear him, and he scolded all the Thai ladies for giving the monks too many delicious dishes and too much pirikara, I think they call it in Sri Lanka. He's saying to them, how can they be good forest monks if you're spoiling them? You're giving them too much. How can they be frugal? How can we be frugal if we're overindulged? So I tend to personally encourage people to bring me a modest dana, just bring 2-3 dishes. Don't bring me 10 dishes. Don't bring me 20 dishes. I'd really like to try and be frugal. I've already got too much stuff. Now, how is it that being frugal helps us be kind? And I think that it's hard to be kind even to yourself if you're getting too caught up in stuff and things. What's the opposite of frugal? Well, really getting caught up in possession and stuff and things and wanting to have stuff, and 2 dishes isn't enough, I've got to have 10 dishes, that kind of thing. Frugality allows you to give enough, even plenty, without wastage. Frugality also reduces the burden of ownership. All that stuff that I've got to look after and clean and organise and protect and, So there's a burden of ownership and of responsibility and protection with every additional thing that we own. The less things, actually the kinder it is. I mean, obviously you need your requisites. You need food and shelter and medicine, clothing. I think we, in the modern day, we also need the technical requisites of, power and communications and travel. But we like to be, at least attempt to be frugal, and I do think if we think about it in this way, that it's much kinder to be frugal. And I think it also connects very strongly with contented and easily satisfied. Last 4. Peaceful and calm and wise and skillful. So peaceful and calm, santindriyo, or peaceful faculties, yeah? So you could be doing your job, your profession, and getting lots of work done, and you could be doing it in an agitated, anxiety type way. Excuse me. Or you can do it in a peaceful way. Naturally, being peaceful and calm is a skill and a capacity in itself. And there are obviously suttas discussing how to become peaceful. But there is that aspect, even in the mundane way, the worldly way. Being peaceful and calm is part of yoniso manasikara, or wise reflection. The opposite of peaceful and calm is agitated and upset. And agitated and upset happens when we ruminate on negative thinking, generally speaking. Or we ruminate on a negative situation that's happened. Oh no, COVID, 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 If we're ruminating on COVID and being all afraid and anxious, or angry, or worried, or planning, then we're not being peaceful and calm. And so that's our yoniso manasikara, not yoniso manasikara. And the Buddha suggests that we don't allow that more than suggests. He states that one should annihilate, do away with, and destroy such negative states of mind. So in order to be peaceful and calm, we need to notice when we're not being peaceful and calm. And for many of us, it's such a habitual state that we're often not peaceful and calm. And so we don't even notice that we're not peaceful and calm. Or we think we are and we're not. So this is one of the Vipassana or insight things, you have to be able to look inside and think, am I peaceful and calm, or am I not peaceful and calm? Looking and seeing and knowing. Peaceful and calm happens when you just don't let yourself think about that stuff. When you replace that negative thinking with positive thinking. Which is tremendously difficult to do, because physical habits are hard to break. Mental habits are even harder to break. And there's a huge resistance to breaking a mental habit. Oh, I've always thought this way. My mind's always running around. My mind's always, blah, 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 right? This resistance to changing the mental habit. But if you wish to be peaceful and calm, then you cannot allow your mind to be filled with negativity, to be filled with greed, to be filled with worry, to be filled with anxiety. And when your mind is filled with greed or worry or anxiety or, disliking, not only are you not peaceful and calm, but you're also, at that point in time, not being kind to yourself, and you're not being kind to anybody else. an agitated, worried, greedy, etc. person is not pleasant to be around. It's not kind to the people around you and us, and it's not kind to ourselves. So, peaceful and calm requires us to be wise, and once again, they work together. We need to have the wisdom to notice that we're not peaceful and calm, to notice, to know, to see and know what the cause of that non-peace and that non-calm is, wise enough to understand that there is a solution. We get wise from listening to the Dharma, hopefully. And wise enough to go, okay, just because I've always had this habit of thinking like this doesn't mean to say I have to think like this right now. I can make the choice in this moment, to stop thinking that and start thinking something else. You can't just not think that. You cannot go from an akusala mind, an unwholesome, harmful mind. You can't go from a harmful mind. It's very hard to go straight. I suppose you can if you're skillful at it, but it's very difficult to go, okay, I'll just stop worrying now and I will be optimistic. You know, that jump's really hard to just go, oh, I'll just stop worrying. Or I'll just stop being greedy. But that is what the Buddha asks us to do. I'll stop being greedy right now. I'll stop being proud right now, yeah? So, but how do we do that? And I know that chanting's gone out of fashion in a lot of places. And I suspect that part of that is because a lot of people who do chanting, maybe some people don't really know what they're chanting. It's one of the reasons, once again, that I heard that the Buddha said we should chant in our own language, although that is controversial. At least that's how it was explained to me. And this is why we all chant in English. Because when we chant in English, or if you chant in Sinhala or Chinese or whatever your own language is, then the meaning of the chanting washes through your mind. And the meaning of the chanting is kusala, positive, beautiful, uplifting. And it gives you an alternate script. So instead of, I don't know, thinking, so for example, if I was grumpy this morning and I thought to myself, oh, grumpy, grr, I don't like this, I don't like that, grr, you know, that thing. And then I notice, I go, oh, this is not good. It's not good for me and it's not good for anybody else. It's very hard to just go, okay, I'm not going to be grumpy. But what I can do is then think, oh, okay, I'll do a little bit of chanting. And I chant in English and I run the meaning through my mind and I think about the meaning of the chanting. And that meaning is beautiful. It's kusala. It's beneficial meaning. And so as I run the meaning of the chanting through my mind, at that moment, I'm not thinking those negative thoughts. And since our emotions respond to what we think, so if you think angry thoughts, your heart will become angry. Have you noticed that? Well, if you think kind thoughts, your heart will become kind. It just happens like that. So the purpose of the chanting of metta is actually to recite kind thoughts, to get that as the new habit, to get your mind thinking kind thoughts as a habit, to help us break out of the negative thinking patterns that we all have somewhere. They're all different ones, but you know. Kulesu and a Nugido, they've got not proud and demanding in nature, which is true. But for us monastics, there's also another nuance in there, in the Kulesu, which is to do with families, I think. And that we should particularly not be too demanding on the families that support us. And that we as monastics in particular shouldn't be proudly demanding things from the dayakas, from the supporters. I think that's very important. It's not kind at all, is it? And I think for lay people, being proud and demanding is also not kind. It's not kind to yourself and clearly not kind to the people around you. So if we develop these 14 qualities, if we think every day about even just one of these qualities, pondering that quality, thinking about that quality in the language that is easiest for you to think in. Whichever language you think in, that's the language you should think about the Dharma in. And ponder it and think about it. And then that pondering and thinking about it is a beneficial thinking. It's a Yoniso Manasikara. And when we think about kindness, our heart becomes kind and the kindness comes up. Okay, what have we got next? So the next part of the Karaniya Metta Sutta talks about how to do it. And I'll try and go through this a little bit faster because I think I'm running out of time. Or maybe not. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. And I think she used the word reprove because it helps make it scan in chanting. But I think that the word reprove usually means disapprove of. So it's a synonym for disapprove of. So wise, who's wise? Ajahn Sujato, or Bhante Sujato's latest translation on this one has it, instead of wise, Winyu, which is the literal translation, he's got sensible people that you respect. So I think that is the wise, right? The sensible people that we hold in esteem because they're sensible and they're virtuous. If those people would disapprove of our actions, then we shouldn't do that if we want to be good, kind people. And clearly we should wish that all beings would be happy in kindness and in safety. As many minutes of the day. So just imagine you're about to go into a meeting at work and you know that the meeting is going to be difficult, or a meeting at home, or any challenging conversation that you know is going to be difficult. What if for 5 minutes before you went into that meeting with that difficult person, you think, oh, I would be really glad if that person would be happy and safe. And really bring that attitude and intention up in your heart really strongly. Even though I may not like them, or I may disagree with their point of view, or I know that they're going to want the thing that I want, the resources that I'm competing for. But still, I want them to be happy. They are my work colleague. I'll be very glad if my work colleague is safe and happy. Regardless of whether this meeting comes out the way I want it to or not, may my work colleague be safe and happy. Yeah? Maybe my attitude will change then when I go in, and I'll be able to deal with this person more skillfully, because I'm not the most skillful person on the block when it comes to dealing with people. But I have noticed that if I set myself up with a heart of kindness, then the meeting will go well. But if I don't, it could go anywhere. So, work in progress, right? We get better at this stuff. The other place that I pick up my kindness first is before I get into a car, before I go in to talk to any other person. If I'm on my own and I walk from one room to another or one building to another, and I know I'm going to encounter someone, then I want to bring that kindness into my heart. That attitude of kindness, that feeling of kindness, and I want to take that attitude and feeling into each meeting with each person that I come across. And when I sit down to meditate, I want to take that kindness for me. When I go to meet myself on the mat, I want to be kind to me. I want to have an attitude of kindness to sit there as a vehicle and a support for my meditation practice. I want that kindness to sit there as a vehicle and a support for my relationships. Personal, private, all my relationships. The Buddha then gives us pretty much an exhaustive list of who we should be kind to. And what I would like you to notice, that it doesn't exclude anybody. It also, great or mighty, medium, short or small, seen or unseen, whatever living beings they may be, may they all be happy. So this also includes people we don't agree with, people we don't like, people that if we weren't practicing the Buddha's teachings, that we might be tempted to have the H word for. Like poor deluded individuals who take up weapons and bombs and drop them on other people, right? Those poor people, those poor deluded individuals who think it's a really good idea to kill others, particularly if they've gone and killed someone we love. It's tremendously difficult not to hate them. But those people belong under the category of whatever living beings they may be. I don't know whether they're great or mighty or medium, but they might be medium or short or small. They might be great and mighty. But if I'm going to follow the Buddha, I'm going to be kind to them anyway. That's the challenge. How can we it's hard enough to be kind to people we love, let alone people that we don't love. The other time is with people that we love who are behaving badly. And almost all families have one member that behaves badly, or some members that behave badly sometimes. It's just a natural part of life. And when we come across that difficult family member or acquaintance, it is naturally more difficult to be kind to them. But this list here doesn't talk about our preferences, does it? It talks about pretty much everybody. So everybody needs to be kind to everyone else. Please excuse me one moment. Okay. Sorry about that. Next slide. And once again, this continues what I was saying before, that we shouldn't allow our own distress, our own anger, ill will. Usually for us that keep precepts, the anger arises when someone's done us wrong. For other people, for some people, it just anger comes up as a habitual state. But when anger comes up because someone we care about's been harmed, if we look at the Karaniya Metta Sutta, it's our sacred duty to not deceive, not despise, and definitely not to wish harm on any other being, regardless of how angry we or how much ill will we may have. We need to drop that anger and ill will and wish that they would be happy. So rather than despising any beings because they're murderers or they're this or they're that, so, once you go down the road of despising beings because they're in a particular category, there's no ending to it. First you despise people because of their behaviour, and that just then leads to despising people. We can't help it as humans. Despising people because of physical characteristics, right? Oh, you've got funny ears. You're too tall. You're too short. You're too skinny. You're too fat. Yeah. How often have we been, our own feelings been hurt by that kind of thing? You're too pale. You're too dark. You're too short. You're too tall. You're too male. You're too female. You're not male enough, you're not female enough. All that. So if we shouldn't deceive anyone, and we should not despise anyone, and we should not even wish harm in our mind, let alone do it. We shouldn't even have a wish for harming other people. And so then the Buddha uses a simile, and naturally, this is the idealized mother, the mother we'd all like to have been, even though in reality there are imperfect mothers who don't necessarily love their children very much. They exist. But we're talking here about the idealized mother who would protect her child with her life, who would lay her life down for her child. The best possible mother ever. But we all understand that concept of the good mother, because there's a lot more good mothers around than there are bad mothers. There's lots and lots of good mothers. And when we see those good mothers and we see how they cherish and dote upon their children and do whatever that child needs. And so whilst perhaps we don't have to spend the money to put somebody else's cousin through university in the same way we would with our own child, the Buddha here is talking about attitude. So this mother, when she sees her child, this child that she would lay down her life for, when she sees that child, what? She rejoices in all his or her good qualities, Oh, I'm so glad that you're smart and strong and brave and sweet, yeah? And a mother who loves her child is like, it's okay, you don't have to be perfect. You forgive them for their imperfections, right? The devoted mother, her love does not diminish by the fact that all people are imperfect and so therefore her child's imperfect as well. In fact, very often such a mother can't even see such imperfections. To her, her child is entirely perfect. So in other words, that mother, when she sees her child, she sees the goodness in that child. And she rejoices in the goodness in that child. And she cherishes and nurtures that child. And so we should see the goodness in ourselves, see the goodness in people around us, and cherish and nurture that goodness within ourselves and within others. Having that attitude of cherishing and nurturing, that attitude that every single being that we meet is as important as we ourselves are, and that we ourselves are as worthy of love as every other being that we meet. Oops. This particular Gata here is one that echoes round and round in my head a lot, and often I will repeat it as during the first stages of my metta meditation. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies, downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. So this is this idea of taking that great ball of love and radiating it out and allowing that kindness to spread, radiating out from our heart all the way out, all around, above and below. And you can just see and feel the love streaming out over the whole world. Yeah? It's really nice. If I'm going for a walk, I'll just roll that round my mind. So I'm walking along, thinking, radiating kindness over the whole world. Yeah. Sort of like my favourite guided meditation. And when are we supposed to radiate kindness? Well, all the time. But I think we're supposed to radiate kindness whether we're standing up or walking, or whether we're sitting down or whether we're lying down. Is that all the time? Probably. And we should sustain this recollection. Which recollection? Radiating kindness over the entire world. So we sustain that recollection, radiating kindness over the entire world, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. Because this is indeed the Brahma Viharas. Here it says sublime abiding. You could also say divine life, heavenly life, godly life. That sentence there gives me one of my little quips that I like to give people who aren't Buddhist yet. In the other religions, they tell you that you can go to heaven after you die. In our religion, we have a try before you die policy. Because if you develop metta within your heart, Brahmam itam viharam, we live in heaven now, in this life. If your mind is always full of kindness, and you're radiating that kindness, whether standing, walking, seated or lying down, then you're already a deva, but you're just still in your human body. So you're already having a heavenly life. So you get a taste, a direct experience of what it's like in heaven now in this life. So, in our religion, in Buddhism, when the Buddha says you can go to heaven in your next life, you don't have to take that on faith. Because here we have Brahmam Viharam. Try before you die. You can go to heaven in this life, in this body, without having to die first. Talk about being able to test it. The Buddha wants us to test what he says. So try it for yourself. You want to go to heaven? Go right ahead, but don't wait till you die. Live in heaven in this life. Contented, easily satisfied, full of kindness. And the last Gata is the one that also explains, just like the previous sutta, which said Ceto Vimutti, which says metta can take you to Nibbana, this last Gata is also saying that should you develop this metta by not holding to fixed views about yourself or what have you, you become pure-hearted through this metta practice. Having clarity of vision also comes through this, because we can't truly develop all these qualities if we can't look inside. Looking inside is the vipassana practice, so that it's a different application, if you like, of the vipassana practice. So the pure-hearted one having clarity of vision through this metta practice. Through this metta practice, we are freed from our sense desires, and therefore we're not born again into this world, which means either a non-returner or an arahant, doesn't it? Not born again into this world is a non-returner who gets to go to the Pure Land and attain Nibbana there. I think being a non-returner sounds all right, doesn't it? You know, you get to go to heaven for a few million years and then go to Nibbana from there. Sounds awesome to me. So that's the Karaniya Metta Sutta. There was something else I wanted to do, show you, and that was the simile of the saw. So I hope you can see this. If I might make it a bit bigger. Maybe I'll do that because you're not going to be able to see that over there. So in the simile of the saw, which begins actually as an argument in the Sangha about the nuns, typical, and the Buddha gave this talk, and at the end he says, even if low-down bandits were to sever you limb from limb, anyone who had a malevolent, so malevolent means full of anger and hate, ill will, if you like. Anyone who had a hateful thought on that account would not be following my instructions. If low-down bandits were to sever you limb from limb, liver from limb, anyone who had a hateful thought would not be following his instructions. crikey, that seems like a really high bar to me. So if that happens, so let's say something difficult that you don't like, because he's pretty much saying that that's about the most difficult, unpleasant thing, to be chopped up like that. So in a situation that's difficult, painful, and you really don't like it, if that happens, you should train like this. Our minds will remain unaffected. We will blurt out no bad words. We will remain full of compassion, with a heart of love and no secret hate. Yeah? I'll bring this over a bit so. Our minds will remain unaffected. We will blurt out no bad words. We will remain full of compassion, with a heart of love and no secret hate. We will meditate, spreading a heart of love to that person that's chopping my arms and legs off. I'm going to meditate and send them love while they're chopping my arms and legs off, if I want to follow the Buddha's instructions. And with them as a basis, we will meditate, spreading a heart full of love to everyone in the world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. And that is how you should train. And then he says, if you frequently reflect on this advice, the simile of the saw, do you see any criticism, large or small, that you could not endure? And of course the monks say, no, sir. If you think about this simile of having your arms sawn off by bandits, and my mind will remain unaffected, I will blurt out no bad words. And starting with them, I'll radiate loving kindness over the whole world. So that's my paraphrase. And the reason it's paraphrased like that is because I walk around thinking about it a lot. Just round and round. And if a difficult moment comes up, I immediately recite this to myself. My mind will remain unaffected. I will blurt out no bad words. I will radiate kindness. I'll remain full of compassion. I'll radiate kindness. Sounds hard, doesn't it? So, if you were to frequently reflect on this advice, is there anything that really could upset you? Probably not. And that, I think, is part of the heart of being skillful at being kind, is to be able to be kind in the most difficult circumstances. That's where the skill really comes in. Most people can be kind when everything's going well, you know, when nothing's going wrong. People afflicted with, discontent and such find it difficult to be kind even then. But most people find it easy enough to be kind when nothing's going wrong. Many people find it very difficult to be kind when everything's going bad and crazy and pear-shaped. And yet it's at those times that the people who can be kind are most valued. Yeah? So, if everything's difficult and people are kind, that's really the most important time. And it gives me great, mudita to rejoice in the goodness when I see around me, when we had the bushfires and half the country turned out to help. Oh, I was so glad at the goodness of my fellow countrymen. During the COVID here and also in Sri Lanka, I understand, people have really been helping each other out, having the kindness to self-isolate, yeah? And doing it voluntarily. I have such great mudita when I think about the goodness of my fellow human beings. Sure, there's lots of cruelty out there. It's not that I don't know about all that. I know all about that. I know about trafficking in slaves and, all the rest of the horrible stuff that goes on in the world. But if I reflect too much on those negative things, then I become upset. If there was something I could do, then I would do it. I would think about it enough to get on to do that. But since there's nothing I can do, there's no point in me ruminating on it. Like, I'm aware of the knowledge. When it comes to me, I accept that information. But ruminating on it only makes me unhappy and doesn't help the people involved. So we need to constantly reflect on metta. This is one of the ways we develop it. And when we sit down to meditate, when I did my long Vipassana retreats some years ago, the teacher always said to start each Vipassana sit with at least 5 minutes of metta meditation, 5 or 10 minutes. Why would you do that if you're just there to do Vipassana? Well, the metta meditation, as the Buddha said, is a basis for your whole practice. And also it gives you the right attitude to yourself. If you're sitting there bringing up kindness and reflecting on kindness and doing the gathas and bringing up that feeling of kindness, and then turning that kind attitude onto the insight practice so that you can look at your internal self, your body, your heart, your mind with an attitude of kindness, then you're much more likely to just watch what's happening instead of having harsh judgment. You know, that harsh judgment of, I can't meditate because all I do is think. If you're one of these people who has trouble meditating because your mind just goes thinking, then we need to help the mind settle down. And whilst you certainly can get some results through just being disciplined and just sitting, whether the mind's busy or not, and pushing it and forcing it, you will get some results from that. But that will come to a dead end. If, however, we fill our minds with metta and we do some metta chanting first, particularly if we do it in a language where we can understand what it means. Now, I'm all for chanting Pali because it is the Buddha's language and it has special quality. It's so beautiful, so poetic, and English, for example, is just not a patch on it. Doesn't even come close in terms of qualities that for talking about the mind and the heart. But chanting in Pali, unless you actually understand the Pali, doesn't have the same effect. Really, chanting in a language that you don't understand what it means, it has a beautiful sound, but it only has one of 3 possible benefits. Like a rhythmic, lovely sound is soothing, so it can have that soothing benefit. But what it doesn't do is, if you don't understand what it means, it doesn't uplift the mind. It doesn't help train the mind out of negative scripts and to relearn. It doesn't help you learn positive scripts, right? We think the same stuff over and over again anyway. That's just the way our minds work. But very often the scripts that we're thinking over and over again are quite negative. And so the Buddha gives us the chanting as a new script to replace the negative scripts. So if you want to sit down and meditate, and you do some chanting first, so that takes your mind off the stuff and business of the world and puts your mind onto something that's at the very least neutral. So if you were to chant Pali and not understand any of it, at the very least that would be neutral. It's not the negativity of the world, it's neutral. If you were to chant the Pali and understand it, or chant your own language so you also understand it, then you get a whole bunch of other benefits that chanting something you don't know what it means can't give you. And the other benefits are learning new scripts, to have new sentences rolling around your mind, so that the sentences that repeat themselves over and over and over are words given, ideas and concepts provided to us by the Buddha, instead of just the dross and chaff that's normally in there. And by contemplating on the meaning of the chanting, because the chanting has all these wonderful, wonderful meanings, then you can uplift your heart, and you can actually, when your mind engages with the meaning of the chanting, then that feeling of loving kindness can come up, which wouldn't happen if you're just chanting something you don't know what it means. Just like if you're thinking angry thoughts, the feeling of anger will come up. If you're thinking kind thoughts, the feeling of kindness will come up. So you sit down, you chant for a little bit, you then repeat a couple of gathas like as a mantra to help your mind get into a positive attitude. And then when the kind feeling comes up, you've got a couple of choices then. You can then move to the breath meditation if you want to at that point, because you're feeling kind and you've got a kind attitude. And so the breath flows more easily. Or you can start doing your Vipassana meditation. And if you're doing your Vipassana meditation and say you're looking at the body, then you're looking at the body with a kind attitude. And when you're looking at the body with a kind attitude, or the heart with a kind attitude, or the feelings, you're less likely to have discontent. You're less likely to have harsh judgment. And if a thought comes along, you're less likely to judge it. You're more likely to investigate it. What is the nature of this thought? What sort of thought am I thinking? Also, if the loving kindness feeling comes up really strongly, it's really lovely. It's so beautiful that you just don't want to think. You don't need to think. The thinking just falls away by itself. So beginning a meditation with 5 minutes or 10 minutes of metta helps settle the mind, helps soothe the mind, helps let go of the attachment to the habits of the worldly thinking, helps the mind's momentum. The mind has such momentum and inertia in terms of thinking, right? It really, that's going to keep going. So if it's going to keep going, give it a different script. Okay, stop thinking about the worldly things and start thinking about metta. If you must think about metta. And then after a little short period of thinking of metta, if you can, particularly if you can bring up that feeling of kindness, at that point it becomes much easier to concentrate on the breath or concentrate on the body scans or whatever it is that you're attempting to concentrate on. Because the mind's in a kusala place. You had yoniso manasakara, not ayoniso. The mind's kusala, not akusala. It's settled down a little bit. And if you help the mind settle down, it's like changing down gears in the car and going from fourth to third to second to first, rather than trying to just go from fourth to first. It doesn't really work very well. You're zooming around your life in fourth gear, and then you think that you should just come to immediate full stop. And just hanging on the brakes like that, it's just too shocking. The mind doesn't want to stop. It's got too much momentum. It keeps going, and it'll roll straight through your meditation practice. So we want to help the mind to settle down. And naturally, routine helps that, Oh, it's time for my meditation. Time to do it. Routine helps. But just beginning with a little bit of metta meditation or chanting at the beginning helps the mind settle. And then you find it's not so unruly and doesn't need to think so much. Okay, so now I'm getting to the point where I'm repeating myself. So, if any of you got any questions, if you type them into the box at the side, Taraka will send them along to me and I can answer them. What I'd like to do, if no questions come in, is finish off this session, because I've now talked, what is it now, 9 o'clock, for an hour and a half. So I'd like to finish off, and if there's no questions, I'm going to finish just by chanting the Karaniya Metta Sutta in English for you. And there was a chanting booklet attached to the email I sent out. So if you have a copy of that, you can bring it up now. But if you don't, I'll just put the text on the screen here. That's Four Boundless Qualities. So there it is in Pali, but I'm going to chant it in English. So hopefully that is, you're able to see that. I might just start with the homage. Homage to the blessed, noble and perfectly self-awakened one. Homage to the blessed, noble and perfectly self-awakened one. Homage to the blessed, noble and perfectly self-awakened one. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature, Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So that's the Metta Sutta in English. And it's now 9 o'clock. And if you like, just as the last 2 minutes, I will chant the Vandana in English just so you can hear it and hear what it means. Indeed, the Blessed One is worthy and rightly self-awakened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, well gone knower of worlds, unexcelled as a trainer for those people fit to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, he is awake and blessed. The Dharma is well explained by the Blessed One, to be seen here and now, timeless, inviting investigation, leading onwards, to be realized by the wise for themselves. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples, who have practiced well, who have practiced straightforwardly, who have practiced methodically, who have practiced masterfully, in other words, the 4 types when taken as pairs, the 8 when taken as individual types. They are the Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples, worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect, the incomparable field of merit for the world. So yes, I also do all my chanting in Pali as well, but tonight I thought I would just chant in English to share the meaning with you. So I hope this Dharma reflection has been of benefit and use to you, and please feel free to contact me with any questions you might have. Thank you. And good night. Terawan Saranai.